The eye being this determining the soul is very true. Determines the person. Dozens of persons have been discovered with very unusual eyes, and very unusual people, of course. Some eyes are phosphorescent and shine in the dark. Some people can see in the dark. Some glow red, and others of a different hue, and in some cases where these persons can see in the dark and have a different orange hue, there's throwbacks to early species that were better adapted to seeing in the dark and such. And in other cases, these persons carry a strong soul or entity fragments from a source distant from this planet. And there are many, many persons with green eyes on this planet, for example, that have origins or one component out of several that may be from an alien source at one time or another. And they come here and frequently carry over their green eyes, and this is a longer tale. But some life forms, for example, see in the silicon range, which is beyond the range of normal human eyes. And our eyes are adjusted at birth to seeing objects with carbon atoms in them, or a carbon base. And so everything on this planet is of a carbon base, and we cannot see silicon ranges ordinarily, even though we have planets in this system that can be measured by the scientists that are in the silicon range. Many worlds, many dimensions. Some persons have eyes that are adjusted to a little wider frequency range, and they can see many of the specters and spirits that normally persons can't see. And some persons see energy forms constantly raining down on the earth, and others have eyes and awareness that allows them to see all the vampire spirits and other life forms that so they can defend themselves. And some persons can see at night, and some see in the day, and they're night blind. There was quite a well-known case of Caspar Hauser, who was abducted in infancy and kept in a dark cell for 18 years, and when he finally got out and got loose, he could see the stars during the daytime. His eyes were extremely sensitive from then on. It's a little-known fact that young persons, children before 8, can have bodies that adapt very well, and after this age it's much more difficult. And the young man put in the cell with night vision, good eyes in the dark, was at a very young age. And in extreme cases, the children can change their bodies completely before 8. And from skinny little orphans, they can turn into giants and strong men and physically fit. And when the human soul first comes into the Homo sapien body, it adjusts to its surroundings for optimum survival when the person's very, very young and just born. And when it finds itself in a body that's subject to the influence of other species or animals, it adjusts the body to this new environment. And only the hereditary genes carry over the human abilities. Now, examples include the children raised by wolves. The American Journal of Psychology in 1927 told of a boy and girl who were found living with wolves and who never could be converted to civilized customs again. An early zoologist magazine mentioned 5 cases of wolf children noted by an English colonel. And a 1924 Chambers Journal told of many more cases. Now, current newsstand tabloids still occasionally headline a wolf boy find. Only a handful of incidents, though, have ever been authenticated about monkeys and other primates bringing up human children. And again, it's the soul, when it first comes in, that adjusts the body to its surroundings. Now, we touched on soulmates previously, but there's another phenomena that's very similar. The people we recognize unconsciously in our lives are usually frequent, but our ever-present rationality promptly erases further thoughts about this closeness, and we go on believing that our acquaintances and loved ones are close just because of present chance and circumstance. Well, in truth, many of the persons in our lives have components of some mental and material energies that have been linked up with our components in previous lives and bodies. Many notable persons brought such previous relations to the attention of others down through the ages. And Rossetti, the great painter, was an example. We're looking at some of Rossetti's models here. He once met a model that he immediately felt very close to and quickly married. She died soon after, and he wandered around in deep grief until he chanced upon a painting done 400 years before that was almost identical to his former wife's. While searching further, he found a picture of the former painter and was amazed to see a form almost identical to his. Going over letters, he found that he'd mentioned to her that they'd been together previously under almost identical circumstances, and he knew they would be together again. And this, then, is a painting of Rossetti's great love, Elizabeth. And in other reports, we can cover this subject more thoroughly. Well, this is a former photo of Wiley Brooks. He's a breatharian. And the truth is that much of the energy of the body comes from the air and water intake and not the food. Breatharians need no food at all. I repeatedly point out to persons who take offense at this concept the fact that a pound of fuel will never keep a stove at 98 degrees more than a few minutes, let alone the many hours would it keep us humans as food. And the big problem in getting our energy strictly on air and water is that there's a limit to how much we can convert. Simply can't drink enough water. It takes years to learn to breathe in large amounts of air unless there's a certain amount of exertion. Now, unfortunately for most, the exertion frequently burns up about as much energy as the body's taking in, and no doubt about it, though, deep breathing from the solar plexus can bring about a great deal of extra energy and superior abilities to we humans. Now, there are some writers that advocate slowly changing over to a diet of fruits for a few years and then eventually switching over to pure air or become a breatharianism. But for the average person brought up on meat and cokes, this could be very dangerous. Very few persons could taper off slowly enough. Very few persons have ever had enough brain wattage potential. A little meat or animal substitutes like milk or eggs are essential to the average person's diet. They contain complex amino acids which keep the brain synapse points working at an optimum level so that you can survive in this low energy negative society. Without these additions, more persons become difficult to compete in the priority-based systems here. It's common to hear a pure vegetarian lament about the heavy negative vibes of civilization. They can't be around congested areas or persons. They don't have enough energy to set up a defense shield to protect themselves against most of these common vibrations. They can't think and compete as well. Now, Wiley was an exception, and he could pump the heaviest iron. He had a great talent for bringing in a lot of air through his lungs and having energy. But very few persons can perform like Wiley Brooks under the same conditions. Now, doing heavy physical exercise in society today is one thing, and sitting around like a yogi in India is another.